All right. Welcome, everybody that is here with us. We want to thank you for joining us today. Today is our second live event, and this time we are discussing autism and driving. As you see on the photo we have here, just a few facts about autism and driving. And so today we're going to hear from 3 of our driver rehab specialists as well as 3 of our clients, and we'll hear each of their stories and individual experiences at Driver Rehab Center of Excellence. So we have 3 locations. Headquarters is in Chantilly, Virginia. We have a location in Chester, Virginia, and we have a location in Westerville, Ohio. So we're going to hear from clients and therapists across our business. We specialize in driver rehab services. We work with our clients to evaluate, train, and equip them if they need any adaptive tools or techniques to be successful as drivers and being independent. Just a few housekeeping notes. So we have each of our speakers scheduled to talk, and then at the very end, we'll do a question and answer session. I would encourage you to use the chat feature on your screen with Google Chat. In the lower right-hand corner, there's a little box that says chat with everyone. We will be monitoring that chat throughout, and then we'll address those questions at the end. But so that we can hear from each of our therapists and our special guests, I want to let them have their time, and we'll open it up at the end. Whatever you're comfortable with, cameras on, cameras off, entirely up to you as guests and viewers. We will have our speakers and clients present with videos on. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started by introducing Danielle and her client, Caitlin.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Weaver. I'm an occupational therapy assistant and driving rehab specialist with DRCE, and this is my client, Caitlin.
Hi.
Caitlin has been working with me for the past
since September
of 2024, and we've kind of just been taking it slow. Caitlin is due to take her driver's examination test the end of this month, which is we're very, very proud of her because she has come along. Oh, sorry, next month. Sorry.
I keep forgetting it's April still.
Yeah, it is April. What we have been doing is we like to drive a lot of the same routes around town because this gives her repetition, builds muscle memory and all that, and helps her get a kind of along with the traffic because it's the same traffic lights, the same stop signs, everything. So she can get a really good grasp on the traffic laws.
And it's easier on me so that I can go around. If I'm going somewhere, I know how to get there without using freeway, since I don't like freeway to begin with. But
correct.
It also makes it easier on me. So if I want to go to work or something, I know the route I can take without running into any issues.
Let me pull this up. So sorry, guys. Technical difficulty for a minute. Okay, one of the other ones was, in what ways did your autism influence how you approach learning to drive, whether it was communication, sensory processing, or executive functioning?
I think it was communication.
Yeah.
Because I don't always like to communicate with people. But you did help me with that by being like, if you want to talk, just talk. If I had issues we've had drivers where they don't pay attention and don't see that there says a student driver on the back, or we were in a car and it had their signal or symbol on the back and they didn't listen, and they would get way too close to us, and instead of me taking over and be like wanting to shout at them, she's like, no, let me handle it, you focus on the driving, I'll focus on them, you focus on driving. But overall it wasn't. I think that autism kind of did get in the way at times because I would get too over focused and not pay attention. She'd say, hey, we need to turn here. And I'm like, I didn't hear her say it. And then she'll say, hey, we need to turn here. And I'll slow down and then turn. she's like, okay, you should have turned it back there, or we should have gone this way. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you because I wasn't paying attention. But we've improved with that because usually she'll have a direction on her phone and I can hear it say, hey, you need to turn here. And sometimes we'll be like, hey, if we're going back home, she'll find a way back, and then she'll be like, hey, we're not doing a U-turn or whatever, just keep going. So I would ignore the U-turn and just turn anyway. Plus, with being autistic, it's not easy to focus all the time. So she does help.
Can you share any other experience where you had to overcome a part of driving that you initially thought would be challenging for you?
I think the only time I've ever had, I think turning was a lot harder than I thought, but I think getting into the car and driving at all was very uncomfortable to begin with. I have driven before, very briefly, with my parents, but I think not wanting to hit the gas pedal because I have a left foot at first.
It's okay.
I hate having a left foot, but driving at the beginning, it was more of the traffic laws, because there are a lot of the times in the old neighborhood I used to live in, they didn't obey the traffic laws at all. If there was a stop sign, they browsed right through it. They didn't even stop. So getting in the car and knowing that I needed to stop at every stop sign, stop at a red light, was a lot more difficult. And especially, I've done this a few times where it is a green light and I am not on a corner, and instead of I'm supposed to stop and wait on the person or the people in front of us to go first, then I can turn. I'm thinking I can immediately turn, which she has gotten on me on plenty of times. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I thought I was supposed to turn, because all the times I've driven in cars with other people, they just turn anyway, even unless they don't have a way to turn. But most of the time at a green light, they will turn anyway. So when I first started driving, I thought, oh, I can just turn whenever I want to. And it's like, no, you can't do that.
Do you remember how long it took us for you to be able to drive on the city streets, not just the residential and low traffic? Oh, no, it was longer than that.
Was it? I thought it was like a month
No,
and a
it was
half.
like 3 months before we got onto the real city streets.
Yeah, because we were mostly in the neighborhoods. Like, we were doing parking lots and neighborhoods and stuff like that. So it took us a while to get on city streets. Now, are we going to immediately go into getting on freeways? No. That's probably not going to happen until I have my license, because I don't trust myself on freeways.
Yeah. Were there any unexpected parts of driving, like being in traffic or reading other drivers' intentions, that were particularly challenging or surprising to you?
I think it's more of the people driving, because sometimes we'd have where people would like back off if they saw that we had this student driver on the back. Like if they were speeding, they would slow down and give us plenty of space so that if we had issues turning or something, we wouldn't have problems. My only biggest issue with the drivers is sometimes they don't pay attention and they will get way too close to us. And it's like, I instinctively want to stop and slow down. And instead she's like, nope, just don't worry about it. You focus on the driving. I'll deal with that. Like, I don't like when people get too close to the car, because it makes me uncomfortable. But most of the time, I thought drivers would be more mad at us because we're so slow. Even though I do the speed limit or I'll sometimes go over the speed limit, surprisingly, not many people actually have an issue with it. Most people do, not all.
What advice or encouragement would you offer to someone else on the spectrum who might be nervous or unsure about learning to drive?
If you have issues, ask your teacher. Like, no matter what, if you think that, it's going to be difficult, as long as your teacher is there, there's not as much issue. I was nervous even getting in the car because I had been in several accidents before myself. My mother was in an accident recently, and I was worried that something was going to happen. So I was super nervous, but she's like, here, I will be with you the whole time. When you do your test, I'll be with you the whole time. So if you have any issues or any problems at all, tell your teacher, or if you're nervous about telling your teacher, tell somebody that you're with, whether it's your parent, a guardian, whoever you're with, tell them, say, hey, I'm nervous about this, or I'm nervous about that. And they'll say, hey, don't worry about it. Especially if at times when you're uncomfortable about something, like sometimes I'll get uncomfortable about drivers being too close. I could say, hey, they're getting way too close. What do I do? Like, ask questions. Don't say, I'm not going to ask questions. Ask questions. If you're unsure about something or you're confused, ask the teacher, because most of the time they will know what to do. If there's times where, like, I've had issues with where I'm driving and I don't know what the speed limit is, and she's saying, hey, it's like 45 or something. If you're unsure about the speed limit or in any part of the thing, and you're not sure and you don't see a sign and she doesn't see a sign, if the sign beforehand was, say, 35, that you were on a road and it said 35, drive 35 unless somebody's going faster than you. And then you realize by then you probably need to speed up. But if you have questions, ask. Because I've had that issue at the beginning where I didn't want to ask her questions. And then over time, I'm like, should I ask her this? And then I'd ask her, and it'd be more helpful for me over time, even if I'm uncomfortable. And my autism is like, I don't want to ask her because I don't know if she's going to be mad at me. No, just ask, because half the time it actually helps you in the long run to ask questions rather than saying, oh, I'm so nervous, I don't want to ask. Just do it. It doesn't do you any good not to ask, because in the long run, it's going to help. So if you're nervous, don't be, because once you get in that groove of driving, it's easy. It becomes easy over time. It's not easy, but it does get easier over time.
And so we worked very hard. We have worked a lot. Caitlin is doing great.
We set a specific, sometimes the time changes, but if you set a specific day every single week, it makes it easier on you, because then you'll know, hey, they're coming on this day or this day. Sometimes the time changes and then you have to adjust. Like we had to adjust this Thursday because someone else was doing the exam. But most of the time, as long as you stick to the same day every week and usually the same time, it also makes it easier. Plus, if you do it, I've learned if you do it in the morning, there is traffic, but there's not as much traffic. So you're less likely to be fidgety.
For your anxiety.
Yeah. Now, if it's in the afternoon, it kind of, when it's closer to like 3:30, 4 o'clock, it kind of, I'm ignoring that. Sorry about that. It's a number that won't leave me alone. Sorry. But most of the time in the afternoon, there's a lot more cars, so it's more, my anxiety gets worse, but it's easier in the morning, depending on what spectrum you're on. It will be easier depending on what type it is.
What are some of the things that we did to help combat your anxiety while driving?
I mean, you talk to me a lot. We have music. I try to tune the music out, but I think it's easy. I mean, we have music, but I tend to.
It's low.
It's low enough you can tune it out. But she'll also make suggestions, be like, hey, next week, why don't we do this? Or, hey, if we're doing movability and I mess up, she'll be like, okay, let's try this way instead.
We break the task down.
We break it down so we can do it a lot easier, which does help, especially with movability, because I'm left-handed. So doing the left side is somewhat easier going the left direction than it is the right direction. But also many of the cars that we have been using, some of them, when you have the reverse, is one type of camera and the other one is a different type. So you have to slowly adjust to which one's which when you're doing the reverse. So sometimes she'll be like, okay, this camera has like a square or something. Focus on the two lines, just to pretend that little square is not there. And then it makes it easier on me. And sometimes it'll have one where it's just the two lines and it'll move with you, so you know where the wheels are. And we'll focus on that. And then if I have issues with it, I can always keep doing it over and over and over until I don't mess up. Which I've messed up a few times, but it's movability. It's not something everyone's good at. Especially me.
No, you do fine.
So far, yeah.
You're doing great.
I don't think there's any other questions I can remember.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Caitlin?
I'm going to ask one thing before we move on, because I was sitting here thinking, so Caitlin, thank you. where's the first place you want to drive to all by yourself after you get your license?
Probably to my parents' house, but that's by a freeway, so we would have to go the back roads. Just to prove to my parents, be like, hey, I got my driver's license. Because I have a stepsister and a biological sister. Both of them have their driver's license. So I want to be like, hey, I got mine because I was trying to get it in high school. And every time I would try, my parents are like, focus on school, focus on school. So I think the first place would probably be my parents' place, or it would be to work, just so I know how to get there, even though technically work's not that far away right now. Will probably be my parents' house, except I go the very long way because I don't like I do not like freeway, and they live a half hour away. So that's definitely not happening. At least
that's okay. Right. All right, we're going to go ahead and get ready. Thank you, Caitlin. We will likely come back to you and have questions for you. So if you guys can stick around, but we'll go ahead and transition over to Amanda and John. I'll let them introduce themselves. And while we're transitioning here, I did see one question pop up that I just want to let everybody know. Are they driving in a driver's training vehicle or using parents' car? With our company, we start out, in our company training vehicles with the passenger brake, and then when appropriate, we can work on building that program out to be training in their own car. And we'll certainly talk about that more later. But just so as everyone's listening here, if you're wondering, we are doing training in our fleet vehicles. All right, I will turn it over to Amanda and John. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So I'm Amanda. Can you guys hear me okay? Thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I'm a certified occupational therapy assistant, as well as a certified driver rehab specialist. And then I have my autism badge through our organization with ADED. So we are up to date on the most current evidence-based research on how to treat this population. And then when it comes to driving, sorry, give me just a moment, you guys.
I like to see what's.
Sorry about that, you guys. So that's kind of, I really enjoy working with this population, and I think it's just as every individual is unique. I think everyone is on their own spectrum when it comes to driving in general. So we're kind of jumping to someone who is licensed. So John has actually, I'll let you kind of talk about your journey too, but John came to us in January, and he was working with DRCE, which is our state vocational rehab, Department of Aging and Rehab Services. So how did you kind of get to DRCE, to us? Like, what did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, so I hadn't driven in about 3 years. I had my license. I had been driving a lot before that. After I got my license, and I did a program called DRCE, and that was through DRCE. That was like a workplace readiness program, and they had a driving class. They had driving classes at the campus in Fishersville, Virginia, and but then we found out they had them here, so we decided to do it closer. But yeah.
I think there's some people on here, some of the therapists on here from Wilson Workforce Center as well. But yeah, so we know some of those therapists and do some of the similar things. So we were just a little more local for John. And so, as we said, he was already licensed. So when did you get your license?
I got my license in 2016. Or 2017. I was 20. I was 20.
Okay. Yeah. So see, that journey is different for John, and John's, I think, even though he's still somewhat novice, he's a little older too. And, we work with clients with all different ages who start their journeys at different times. Did you want to cover too what your medical history and background is?
Yes, I have ASD, autism spectrum disorder. and I have bipolar and ADHD. So
Okay. So you got licensed at 20 and then you came to us. So what kinds of maybe strategies helped you, I guess, maybe even before us with driving? And then now what have we worked on that has maybe been a little different or helped you be more successful with driving?
We practiced driving on freeways and interstates, and that helped a lot, and parallel parking. And I did a Drive Focus app, which was helpful, and in trying to pay attention to the different signs on the road and on the markers on the ground of the road, and all the details.
Yeah, because there's definitely a lot of stimulation as you're driving, lots of things to pay attention to and look at. So Drive Focus is an app that I most often recommend to our clients, and it really just helps train the brain where to look out of all of this stimulation and that's coming in and that sensory input. Where do you focus your attention? What's going to be most helpful for you and ultimately the safest? And then, my gosh, how do you keep your eyes on the road too at the same time? So that's been helpful. So the research for ASD and driving, really shows we start with that motor component of just basic controls of the vehicle. Can you operate the gas, brake, steering? So when John came to me, when he was evaluated in January, he already had those skills down. He could keep the vehicle in his lane. He knew to look for the stop signs and stop at the white line. So where we kind of intervened is more of the visual skills. Where do I scan? And then also combining the two together, but at a higher level. So John and I focus more on executive skills when it comes to driving. So you have executive skills, just in the daily life, not related to driving, and that's problem solving. It's thinking critically. It's working through a situation and making decisions. So now apply that to driving. And again, with all that stimuli, that can be a challenge, right? So we've worked on wayfinding, general like navigation using GPS, right? Yeah. Maybe planning a route. So I like to ask this too, what was one of your favorite sessions that we've done and why?
I'd say my favorite was when we went to National Harbor in Maryland, like near, they have, it's an interesting place with a big hotel and like Ferris wheel and a big sculpture, which was really cool.
Yeah, you had to navigate a parking garage.
Yeah, a parking garage. That was neat.
Interstates, right? Changing lanes, making sure we got off at the right exit. We've also done what happens when you pass an exit or your destination, and how do you get turned around safely, right? Or what's the plan? So I would say, were there any unexpected parts of the driving that you think you've overcome?
I'd say when left lane merges into one, like that's always difficult. Yeah, I have to pay attention to this. You always, pay attention to the signs, and then also pay attention to people trying to merge, like try to read what they're doing, see what their intentions are. It can be difficult to decipher like their intentions. So
yeah, and so that's already something that you have to implement and practice just in your daily life, right? You have to pick up on the social cues, or what does someone mean when they make a gesture? That's can be difficult to interpret sometimes, and often that takes training and practice to really understand that. And I think Caitlin kind of mentioned something like that too, the behaviors of those drivers. So, and I think it's difficult for the therapist, it's difficult for the clients to understand, because you're sitting here and you're telling someone, all right, you have to stop at this stop sign, you have to stop at this white line, but yet you just see other people blow through the stop sign or do a rolling stop and never actually stop. But yet that's what you're going to be tested on, and that's the traffic laws, of the state. So sometimes that's difficult. Like, what's the rule, and then what are you socially going to see in that daily routine or daily driving journey? So yeah, so that's been interesting, right? Having to interpret those behaviors, and understanding those a little better. Do you think that overall the training has increased your understanding then of those behaviors and skills?
I'd say so, yeah.
Okay, so I guess we were talking about the interstate driving. So in what ways do you think your autism influenced your approach when you first were learning how to drive, or even now that we've done this higher level driving?
I guess I don't know if it affects it that much, but I have difficulty paying attention sometimes to the signs, and also making sure you turn right on, if you're turning right on red, not to hesitate, like I have to be swift and confident in my decision making, and be confident on the freeway and interstate and all that, and can be difficult. So, but yeah, I feel like I've gained the confidence and overcome some of it.
Yeah. And we were kind of saying some people are just the jump into the deep end kind of people, and some you have to take those baby steps and get used to the water temperature, right? So it's kind of similar with driving. It's like you have to figure out what works best for you and then work on that approach. But I think ultimately, I think the advice, or what advice would you give? I'll give mine. For someone else on the spectrum wanting to drive or learning to drive.
I guess I would advise people on the spectrum to, if they're hesitant to drive, I would say give it a try, and stick with it, and try to overcome any obstacles, and try to, difficulties, and
don't give up, right?
Don't give up.
I think you have vastly improved on where to focus your attention, and kind of holding that attention more. I think the Drive Focus app has helped a lot with that. I think that's been a strategy that's really helped John. And again, it's about, I think, maybe trusting the recommendations of the clinicians and the people who know you best, and seeing ultimately what works best for you as an individual. All right. I think, does anyone have a question for John?
Well, I'm going to ask the question that I asked Caitlin. John, where was because you are licensed, so what was the first place that you wanted to drive to all on your own?
I think I wanted to just drive around, I guess it was the neighborhood, kind of get used to the neighborhood, and then drive to a store or a restaurant or something, something simple was the first thing I did, was drive around simple areas.
I love it. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you, John. Please stick around there with Amanda, because we're going to bring you back. We're getting some good questions in the chat that we will address here in a little bit. But I want to go ahead and shift over to Drew and Kevin.
All right. So I think Kevin joined. I think I saw his phone number join in. Kevin's joining us remotely. Are you here, Kevin? Maybe. Trying to have.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm looking at the list.
It should be the
614 number.
Yep, I believe that's him. Kevin, if you unmute, you'll be able to join the, um, should look like a little microphone with a line through it.
Drew, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself,
Yeah,
and maybe
yeah.
we can see
So,
if we can figure out.
Yeah, so I'm Drew. I'm an
Can you guys
occupational
hear
therapist.
me?
We can hear you,
Oh, there we
Kevin.
go. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, great. So what questions do you guys have for me?
So I'll introduce myself, and then I'll have you introduce yourself, and I'll have some questions for you, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So I'm Drew. I'm an occupational therapist. I'm also a driver rehab specialist. I've been with our company for like 9 months or something like that. And I've been working with Kevin for, I think, 3 or 4 months now. Or at least I'm pretty sure around there. And Kevin had actually had training before, but I'll let Kevin introduce himself. And Kevin, if you could also give us a little bit of a background about what your driver's experience had been like prior to meeting us and what it's been like learning so far.
Thank you, Jill. Hi, my name is Kevin Chrisman. I have been working on driving with your guys' company for about 3 or 4 months now, like what you said. First, I was with Ohio State, and unfortunately, it did not turn out very well at all. So my dad and I just he tried to teach me himself, and he was really good. But we need someone else to help me learn the rest of the way, which is where I found you guys. And it's just been really great for us ever since.
So, Kevin, when you first started learning to drive, what kind of strategies helped you the most? What were the main challenges that you ran into either before meeting me or with me that related to just driving, or that you noticed came from driving with autism?
Well, some of the challenges, I could tell all the signs and stuff of the road and stuff like that, but I did not know about defensive driving or driving for roundabouts or sometimes I would drive for red lights or for stop signs. Those were my main problems.
And
But
as
I
Kevin's
would
been
have
working,
to say,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, go ahead and keep going.
I would have to say that the easiest for me before I met you guys was, believe it or not, the maneuverability.
So as Kevin's been with us, he's been working through a lot of different aspects of driving. One of his main ones was reacting to other drivers. And so, Kevin, as part of dealing with your autism spectrum disorder, do you feel like dealing with the communication aspect between you and other drivers, do you feel like that was kind of playing into the difficulty reacting to other drivers at all?
I think it was really difficult. I think it was extremely difficult before I met you guys. Yeah.
And then would you be willing to share some of any experiences while learning to drive so far that you feel like were really important to helping you get to where you are now? Because where Kevin is now, we're actually planning to take his driver's test at the end of next month because he's been doing so well with both maneuverability and driving on the road. Because he mentioned roundabouts earlier, and he does roundabouts on his own now. He's able to drive on all town roads almost completely on his own, with only occasional little things here and there. But for the most part, he's doing awesome.
Yes. I feel like that one of the things that's been really important in helping me out the most was like good encouragers, because my dad has always told me that when you have like an encourager, or like if you like have like confidence and when you focus and stuff like that, you can do anything you want to do, whether you have autism or not.
And Kevin, what advice or encouragement would you give to anyone else who's got autism that's looking at wanting to drive or is thinking about learning to drive? What advice would you give them about the process?
I would have to say two things. Number one, just observe the other drivers around you and like see what they do and stuff like that. Like a good example would be like your parents, because they should like know the right way to drive, and all you have to do is just like observe the way that they drive and stuff like that. And the second thing is that if you have autism and if you're like working on learning how to drive, I would have to say focus and never give up, because everyone makes mistakes, but the most important thing is if you learn from them and focus on the right way to drive and never give up.
I think that is additionally something that Kevin and I went over a lot, was the everyone makes mistakes thing, because Kevin deals additionally with anxiety, and the combination of those two tended to result in a bit of, and Kevin, if you disagree with me, please let me know, but it tended to result in a bit of Kevin thinking that he was the only one who could make, or who was making the kinds of mistakes he was. And so with a lot of our training, in addition to like education on what to do while driving, it was also teaching Kevin a little bit of understanding that he's not alone in those decisions, those mistakes, and that a mistake is a moment where you can learn. And throughout the process, he's been getting much better at it. It's been really cool to watch. Would you say that's accurate, Kevin?
Yes, exactly. No, the reason why I didn't say anything was because I agree with you 100%.
Does anyone have any questions for Kevin?
Well, I'm going to ask my question I've been asking everybody. Kevin, I'm not sure if you were here with the other two. So it sounds like you're getting your license soon. What's the first place you want to drive to all by yourself?
Anywhere in Gehenna. I would like to start driving anywhere in Gehenna myself.
And for those not in Ohio, and I'm not even in Ohio, but I know that is an area. What would you say, Drew? Like Columbus, like greater?
Yeah, it's
Columbus
one
area?
of the like sub cities within Columbus. Yeah, it's closer to the airport in Columbus. It's the area in which Kevin lives.
Yeah.
Right. Are you guys all? Anything else you want to share from you? You guys still have a few more minutes. If not, we can move on to questions. But I didn't want you to end early if there was still more that Kevin wanted to share.
Is there anything else you want to share, Kevin?
That's basically it, actually.
Well, thank you for sharing. And Kevin, if you're able to stay on, we may have some questions here. So I'm just going to look in the chat. And I also just want to thank everyone who took time to join us today. You know, I want to just take one brief moment. April is Autism Awareness Month. And I know that recent events have really highlighted this being Autism Awareness Month. And I just want to congratulate all of you anyone listening now, anyone who may listen later, for this, milestone in working towards getting your driver's license. It's huge. It's a big deal. And we're all very proud of you, and you guys have really put in the work. So I just wanted to say that. I'm going to go ahead and glance at the questions here. So we did go over, Elaine had asked earlier, are they driving in a driver's training vehicle or using a parent's car? We always start with our vehicle. All of our fleet vehicles are equipped with a training brake. And in the event that there would be any other auto adaptive equipment needed or any other assistive technology, we do provide that as well. If and when it is appropriate for the training plan, we can look at transitioning into the car that they would be driving, whether that be their parents' car, their own car. I know we have done that here. Yes, Drew, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to add that when we transition into clients' cars, we always usually bring or use what's called a wing brake additionally to give us a passenger brake for those vehicles as well. So that way we maintain the safety that we have in our own vehicles, or at least as close to it as we can. Sorry if I didn't mean, I just wanted to throw that in there in case it didn't.
No, thank you, because I wasn't even thinking of that. And also, we do a lot of times within the program that we're building, taking their licensing exam is built into that. And so getting them comfortable with whichever vehicle they'll be taking that licensing exam in. If they need to use one of our vehicles, we make sure if they're going to be using a parent's or family member, whatever other vehicle, we are going to make sure that they familiarize themselves with that to pass those licensing exams. Something that Kevin mentioned that may not be familiar to people outside Ohio is maneuverability. So in the state of Ohio, that is a component of the licensing exam. Actually, I'd like to ask Caitlin if you can describe to our listeners and viewers what maneuverability is and what it's like trying to learn that. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Sorry if it's a little loud. We have thunder and rain here right now. So if it's loud, sorry about that. So in our state, maneuverability is basically like there's 4 cones. Five cones, but there's like one in front of you, and then there's 2 on each side, short distances away. So they have you, depending on how, sometimes they'll like have you back up first, and then they'll put the cones in. Sometimes they'll already be there, but they want you to basically go forward. And depending if you're going left or right, it really doesn't matter. You go around the
center cone.
The center cone, then you stop a short distance away, and then you have to back up around the center cone and go through the other 4 cones without hitting any of them.
And there's 9 feet between the center cones, the 4 center cones. There's only 9 feet distance.
So we have to go in either direction, depending on which direction they tell you to go first. But you basically go around the center cone and then back up in between the cones without hitting any of them, which I've hit a few, but
we all have.
And then once you get all the way back, you stop, and then they'll have you go forward and go the other direction. It's a little bit more difficult with, like, when we first started practicing, we just didn't have the center cone, and it was much easier to do it without the center cone, because you can just like pull forward and pull back. And
because we broke it down into steps for Caitlin to make it more manageable.
Yeah. So when the center cone, most of the time they want you to you can use the backup camera if you want. It used to be where we weren't allowed to use the backup camera. They've since changed that where you can. But I've had, my issue is with me wearing glasses, and sometimes it reflects, so it's very difficult for me to see certain things for a few minutes. But most of the time it is actually easier to go around the cones. I think a word of advice, if you do have to do maneuverability, listen to your teacher, because she's the one that's noticed with me that sometimes I'll think I'm away from the cone and I look over and it's in my rearview mirror, so I know it's out of the way, but in reality it's actually very close to the door and I don't realize it. But maneuverability is basically they just have you go around these cones, and if you hit any of them, you basically fail. It's depending on who you get for a teacher. My sister had that. She had to take it like 4 times, and every time it was movability, she failed. It wasn't anything else. It was that
All right.
task.
So as someone so I learned how to drive in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, we have to do parallel parking, which, full disclosure, I did not pass the first time many, many years ago. But I will say maneuverability to me is harder than parallel parking. I was visiting our Ohio office, and I actually think I was out with Angie and one of her clients, and I was talking a big game, and her client said, fine, you get in the driver's seat and do it. I hit cones. So it is hard. It's not easy. But
Yeah, I feel like the cones are way harder than just doing the 2 barrels.
Yeah. Maneuvering through 5 cones is way harder than parallel parking.
And it's way less useful.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's like practicing for pulling through a parking lot into a light pole. It's because you do that all the time.
Yeah. All right. Looks like, let me see other questions. So Elaine asked, do you train on how to get a learner's permit? So we don't have any way specifically that we are training for our clients to obtain their learner's permit. We're always happy to talk through it with clients, family members. But in order for us to do any behind the wheel testing, we do ask that they at least have their learner's permit. We are, and I will turn it over to Amanda here, able to do a potential to drive evaluation outside of specifically that learner's permit component. Amanda, if you want to just touch briefly on the potential to drive and what we're looking at there.
Okay. Yeah. So it's almost exactly as it's explained or outlined there. That is what we're assessing is someone's potential. So as OT providers, we're trained to understand. What was that, Kevin?
I was talking to myself. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. So we are trained to understand these diagnoses and then how that potentially impacts those driving skills. So we do a lot of the clinical assessment for the potential to drive, and then so we're looking at all those driving skills. We do a basic vision screen. We're going to look at those executive functioning skills. We look at someone's physical function, and then we're looking at, is someone coachable? If we provide some education or any type of training or techniques or strategies, can that person demonstrate some carryover of that education? Because that's what we're going to be looking out for when we ultimately go behind the wheel, or when we're looking at someone as a potential driver rehabilitation candidate. Is someone a good candidate to do training with us? So during that potential to drive assessment, we don't actually go out behind the wheel because it's also a pre-permit assessment. So this potential to drive assessment is looking at those who haven't even obtained a learner's permit yet. It's good for someone who's questioning whether or not they would even be appropriate to pursue driving. So sometimes we have the family or caregivers reach out to us too and say, hey, I'm not even sure. Or maybe the client themselves is questioning, can I even do this? Do I want to do this? So it's really looking at, is this person going to be a good candidate for driving in general? And then we would also, instead of doing it behind the wheel, since that person doesn't have a permit yet to legally operate the vehicle on public roads, we would do maybe some activities as a passenger. So looking at scanning, can someone recognize these signs? What is the overall knowledge of a vehicle itself or the road rules and traffic laws? So we want to really have a good understanding, a good base idea of what their foundational knowledge is when it comes to driving in general.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would encourage, I think I saw some of our vocational rehab members hop on here, and to anyone listening after, always please reach out to us if you have any questions about that, if that would be appropriate, to start with your client. And then I am going to keep John and Amanda on. A question was asked if John is willing to share more about the gap in driving after he was first licensed to then doing more training and what that looks like what that looked like, and kind of what brought you back to doing training.
Do you feel comfortable sharing that?
I think so.
Okay.
What should I just say? Like,
Yeah. So when you stopped driving, how long was the gap, and maybe why? If you feel comfortable sharing that, and then what brought you back to?
yes. So I stopped driving for 3 years, and I was just I was doing like a place readiness program for 3 years, and I wasn't able to drive. So, but then when I got back, we were cautious, I guess, about how well I could drive after that length of time. And, so I got back to driving again.
Were you nervous about getting back into it, or questioning your skills, or if you still had those skills?
I was a little nervous about it. Like, I had a feeling I could drive a short distance to like a store or something, but to drive far on a freeway, I was nervous about.
Look at you now, driving to National Harbor.
Yeah, and for those not familiar with the National Harbor area, it's intense. There's traffic circles. There's a lot going on down there. People coming in and out of a casino and events. All right, I have a question here from Joy. And of course, it's going to be one of those, I don't know, Joy, but she asked, how long is each session, and what is an estimate number of sessions with a novice driver? And certainly, Joy, I have to give the standard answer of it's absolutely specific to each individual. Certainly, we want people to be able to drive for as long as they can. To maximize our time, their time, we're definitely going to try and schedule 2 to 3 hour sessions, but obviously it's going to go back to what an individual can tolerate, and also maybe what we're working on that day. Local roads are sometimes maybe less stressful than highways or freeways, so maybe they can only tolerate so long depending on what the environment is. We're always, we check in with each of our clients before we start out. How are they feeling? What are they feeling that day? I know I do that. We have you scheduled for this long. Please let me know if and when you need a break. Certainly breaks are appropriate. Just really working on being able to advocate for how they're feeling that day. I know me myself, there's times when I could drive 6 hours, no problem, sunny day, windows down, music on. And there's days where I can barely drive the 15 minutes home. I'm so exhausted. So we certainly listen to each of our clients in that regard as well. Estimate number of sessions, again, it's kind of one of those, it's specific to the individual. We have our benchmarks, we have our parameters to where we're looking at and measuring, to get to licensing, after licensing, and then looking at those benchmarks of local roads, introducing highways if that's a goal, and things like that. So I don't want to give a hard number there, because I don't want anybody to take that and think that that's their individual measurement tool, but certainly happy to discuss that further. If there's an individual that you would want to talk about a case, happy to do that. Art on our staff here also pointed out that it's OT month, and I forgot. So not only do we share probably the coolest month, and so it's really awesome. We are a staff of, sorry, Julie, I'll let you speak at the very end. That we are a staff of OT professionals, OT practitioners, and combining our skills as OTs with our clients. And then let me check if I missed. Joy asked what the wing break was. I think Drew offered to get one and show it.
I have one for show and tell.
Yeah, if you want to hold it up there, and I can kind of, so if you want to show the component that latches onto the brake rod, And again, I always recommend trial this in a vehicle before you take off, but that rectangular section there goes around the brake. It's not a great fit in all vehicles. And then the instructor, person in the passenger seat, would hold on to that other end, and then just you gently press it, and from the passenger seat you can apply the brake. Definitely recommend, if you're going to do it, take some time to practice before being out around any traffic. Again, this is something that we use in our company and that we do training on. So I would certainly recommend anybody that chooses to use this kind of do a learning session for yourself before you're out in any type of traffic or increased speeds, so that you know what that feels like and what that feedback is that you're getting from applying that brake. So there's my disclaimer.
There's also a elastic band that goes around the rear view mirror, so that way it holds the brake at an appropriate angle. Doesn't always work, but it's usually pretty helpful. And Art also does make a good point. There is a curvature here to help avoid this getting stuck in either the brakes, the accelerator, sometimes even the dashboard it can get stuck on. So you have to just make sure it's adjusted correctly, push it in a couple times before you actually take off, because it's really unfortunate when you find out it's in the wrong spot while driving. So takes a little bit to figure out how to put it on.
All right. Well, we are right at 3 o'clock. I just want to thank anyone who was able to join us today listening. I want to thank Drew and Amanda and Danielle for being our DRCE staff, but a special thank you to Caitlin and John. And I think Kevin left, but Drew, if you can pass along our thanks to Kevin for really sharing.
They're driving in a really bad storm right now, so they wanted to hop off.
Got it. Well, that was great. It was really awesome for you all to come on here and show that, you know, everyone's story is unique to them, and just being successful with driving and moving on to that next phase of independence and driving where you want to drive to. Anything else I missed there? All right. Well, thank you all, and stay tuned for our next live event, hopefully next month. Don't know the topic yet, but it will be announced on our social media. So make sure you follow us. What is it? Like, follow, subscribe. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and now YouTube. So we look forward to continuing to share all this with you.